Hello guys, welcome back to another episode of Send It. Today I'm joined by myself, of course, Waj. We've got my co-host, the advisor. This time I've decided to do the intro. Normally it's him, but I decided to take the honors. And we're joined by our lovely, lovely guest today, BraveNewDeFi, who's from Nexus Mutual. A real pleasure to have him today. How are both of you today?
Yeah, I'm doing well. It's good to be here.
Nice to have you on, man, and nice to have you doing the intro, Waj. To be honest, probably a better business decision on our side.
No. Don't say that. Anyway, I'm super glad to have Nexus Mutual because it's a protocol that isn't really like the protocols that we've had on our show before. I mean, we've predominantly been talking about DeFi protocols, and kind of some of them are lending markets, some of them money markets, some of them perpetual exchanges, kind of very hardcore DeFi stuff that we've had. And now we're kind of taking a step back and kind of thinking about how we can protect against that. And so I think Nexus can play a real crucial role in how DeFi evolves from here. And so that's hopefully what we're going to learn about today, not only myself and the advisor, but also I think the viewers that we have today as well. So yeah, would love to first of all learn about what actually is Nexus and kind of what is it doing in the DeFi space today.
Yeah, absolutely. Nexus Mutual, for those of you who don't know, is a decentralized insurance alternative. And we use a community-based approach to sharing risk. So everybody who joins the mutual can contribute ETH, they can hold NXM, they can buy cover, they can underwrite cover, they can participate in governance. You can pretty much, as a member, participate in every level of the mutual. And so this is a more community-minded model that was very common before, the rise of like big traditional insurance, where people came together, they shared risk, and when somebody incurred a loss, people would work together to make those folks whole. And so it's kind of this, it's a discretionary mutual model, which is also a very common model that's used by a lot of other people acting in traditional insurance as well. Like, people are familiar with the different mutuals. It's kind of returning back to this community-based model and away from like separating out the actuarial work, the underwriting work, and the assessment away from the people that are actually buying cover. So, that's essentially the model that we're using. What Nexus actually does is we've primarily been underwriting cover for risks in DeFi, so risks on chain. Our most popular product that's been around the longest is protocol cover, which is protection against smart contract risk. So when you're deploying funds in DeFi, let's say you're depositing in Aave, you're depositing in Curve, you're depositing in some DeFi protocol, you are exposed to smart contract risk, whether that is the threat of a hack, the threat of there being some flaw in the economic design where somebody can go in and manipulate prices on an oracle and withdraw all of the money from a lending market, or one of the more common vectors that we've seen over the last like 3 or 4 years has been reentrancy attacks, where somebody can go in and essentially they can loop a function and they can exploit out the funds that are held in a contract. So we've seen a lot of losses. I think it's been around $7 or $8 billion worth of losses here in the last 3 years or so. And it's something that definitely holds us back from wider adoption. And it's the thing I think most people outside of DeFi associate with crypto. They associate crypto with either making a lot of money or losing a lot of money, which is not a great public image for us. But if we want more people to participate on chain, you need some kind of a coverage model so people can protect themselves against these risks. And there just aren't many, there's not really many traditional insurers that are willing to underwrite that risk for the average user. And there's really not a lot of people underwriting risk in this sector in the first place. So that's one of the reasons why the mutual was established in 2019.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. I think one of the things that we do see a lot in DeFi today is quite unfortunate, but even today we do still see exploits week after week. Some of them big, some of them small, but it can affect anyone really, especially when you're trying to use some of these more innovative, newer protocols, you could say. But I think we've even seen that in the past, even bigger protocols have been exploited. I think one of the ones that really stands out to me last year was the Euler exploit. And I think Nexus has been involved with that in a good way, actually. I'd love to learn more from yourself, kind of about the different products and kind of which protocols you insure and kind of how that all works exactly, especially from a user perspective. Let's say you're someone like me who loves to be a little bit degen and use some of these different protocols. You do like to provide collateral and things like that. How does a user even get insurance in the first place?
Yeah. So one thing I'll set out and say too is that people often use the word insurance with Nexus, but we are a discretionary mutual. So we offer discretionary cover, which is not insurance.
Ah,
Just to be specific there on the difference between those two,
yeah.
insurance is something that's heavily regulated in different ways all over the world. So with a discretionary mutual model, again, is you're joining the mutual and you're sharing risk with other people. So you can, as a member of the mutual, you can buy cover. So at the end of the day, members of the mutual have final say on which claims get paid. But we have that cover wording agreement, and the claims assessment process follows the line that these are the cover terms, and if there is a loss according to the cover terms outlined for each individual product, that members should pay a claim. Historically, we've paid out claims where losses have been verified and fit the wording. Even in some cases, there have been things that weren't technically covered by the cover wording, but members used their discretion in a positive way and still paid those claims.
Oh,
So
that's
the
good.
difference is why someone is paying a claim. An insurer has a legal obligation to make a claim. As a discretionary mutual, we can make a choice, and we can even use that discretion to pay out when the wording says otherwise. So you're trusting the economic model and the fraud prevention mechanisms within the mutual to align incentives so that people pay claims. Because at the end of the day, if the mutual didn't pay claims, nobody would buy cover, nobody would use us, people would leave the mutual, and the whole thing would go bust. So that being said, how do people buy cover and how do people protect themselves against risk? Typically, what we see right now is people are deploying funds into protocols, and then they're coming to us to buy cover. There's a lot of funds that are buying cover. There's a lot of higher net worth individuals that are buying cover. With some of the people building on top of Nexus, like Open Cover, we have more retail members, like retail users that are buying cover, and they're coming to us through that distributor Open Cover, and they're active on Base, Arbitrum, and Optimism. So people find us one way or another, and then they come and they buy protection. They come into the app. If you're buying cover through Open Cover, you can just go choose the coverage that you want. You choose the amount of cover that you want, either denominated in DAI or ETH. So if you do have a claim to file, you're going to get your payout in whatever the cover is denominated in. A lot of people, like if they're using Pendle to earn on liquid restaking tokens, they're going to get ETH denominated cover. So if ETH goes up or down in price, it doesn't matter because one ETH is always one ETH. People that are earning in stables typically buy DAI denominated covers. And then you select the period of time that you want to be covered for. And that's, the active cover period. So that's how people are coming and buying cover. The risk that they're protecting themselves against, again, there are two core types of risk within DeFi if you break them into two different categories. One is the technical side and one is the economic side. On the technical side, you have the smart contracts themselves. So can somebody come in and exploit a flaw within the contract? Is there some math error? Is there a logic error that allows somebody to exploit a function? Is there a reentrancy error, which we've seen, again, a lot of? Is there something within the contracts that's flawed that somebody can manipulate to be able to steal funds from the protocol? The economic side is, let's say, we were talking about this earlier for MakerDAO Black Thursday. You had an event where prices move very quickly and oracles were updating, but keepers weren't very active because gas prices were very high. And so the keepers that are liquidating these lots within Maker are submitting bids, and their goal is to submit the lowest bid so they can make the most money. When competition doesn't really exist, people can submit very low bids. They can make a lot of money, and they can liquidate these lots. There wasn't protection in there that prevented people from bidding like at zero DAI. So people were bidding and saying, I will give you zero DAI and I will liquidate this lot. So they were creating bad debt through these liquidations because there was no competition. This isn't really a smart contract failure. This is just a design failure. And so at the time, we didn't cover that risk. After that, it became clear that, this is a risk that we didn't anticipate. So members went back to the drawing board, revised the wording, and then now we have that in the mutual. So if there's severe liquidation failure that leads to a loss, that's covered under protocol cover. In the case of bad debt accruing in a lending market, again, if there's severe liquidation failures, we cover that. Another thing that we cover that a lot of people don't cover is oracle risk. So if someone's able to manipulate an oracle and move the price so they can exploit a lending market, or they can, exploit an oracle in some other market that creates a loss for users, that's also something that we cover. The more unlikely risk is if somebody goes in and actually corrupts an oracle, so they manipulate the actual data feed. That's a lot less common. It's more of people manipulating prices that can move an oracle outside of the standard bounds within the market. This happens if people are using centralized oracles. We saw that in 2020 in November around Thanksgiving with Compound, because at the time Compound was using Coinbase as their primary market for DAI. Low liquidity in that market. People were buying up DAI. DAI went up in price. Lots of people got liquidated when they shouldn't have. And then that created issues within Compound. So, there's a lot of these different examples. If you look back in DeFi, a lot of the products that we've made, we've updated over time to reflect those risks and to better adapt to those risks, because ultimately that's what people want when they're buying cover.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. It's really interesting to hear about the different types of the different elements that you actually cover. I found the Oracle one really interesting because I think we did see some Oracle attacks happening, maybe in the bear market. I remember the Mango Market Oracle attack. I'm not sure if you guys were covering Mango Markets on Solana.
We mentioned it on the show today, actually.
Oh yeah.
Because we were talking about some the Storm legal case and some of the Uniswap stuff and some other stuff about how to actually regulate the industry, what's fair, what's legal, and all that stuff. And that topic came out as well. And actually very interesting to hear what BraveNewDeFi has to say about incidents like these, and how something like Nexus Mutual can be at the service of people in the future in similar situations.
Yeah, so for Mango, we didn't cover Mango because Mango, I believe, is on Solana.
Yeah,
and we don't cover Solana because we offer coverage for EVM compatible networks.
Okay.
Solana wouldn't be included in that. But there have been cases where we have covered that. So one example I have that's similar is the Cream exploit from 2021, right? It was October 2021, and an attacker came in, a very sophisticated attacker, and they manipulated an oracle that was being used in the Cream markets. And Cream was a Compound V2 fork. They had longer tail assets in their markets, one of which were these Yearn Vault tokens. And the oracle they were using was the actual Yearn Vault itself. And so what somebody was able to do is they deposited those Yearn Vault tokens as collateral, they borrowed against them, and they did something that most people wouldn't think about, is instead of, because that is the oracle source, right? So how do you manipulate that? Well, what this person figured out is, if I send money to that vault, that I'm increasing the price per share of the vault tokens that I hold. And if I have those in a lending market and I'm sending money directly there and I'm bumping up the price of that, then I can borrow more against this collateral. And so through a few different vectors, they were able to use flash loans to donate there. They were borrowing, and they borrowed all of the available liquidity within the lending market. And they did this, and they pretty much stole all the funds that were on Cream. There were very few funds that weren't affected in this case. And so now there's a lot of collateral that's worth a lot of money at the smart contract level. That's what the protocol thinks, because this price has been inflated, but actually there's not really anything there. There's not nearly enough to cover all of the debt. At one time, I want to say, if I'm remembering this correctly, there was he manipulated the pricing, so there was $3.5 billion worth of collateral on Cream, and then he borrowed $2 billion or something. I mean, it was just some crazy large number. It was a very, very sophisticated attack, and that person or those people were never caught. So with that was pretty much the end of Cream. Cream before then had been hacked a few times in much smaller circumstances, but that was kind of the final blow. And so there were a lot of people that were affected by that. That was one that we paid out for. I think we paid out something like $350,000 to $400,000 in claims for that. There weren't a lot of people that had cover for Cream, but the people that did, they went through the claims process. That was I had been with the mutual at that point for 6 or 8 months. So that was my first claim event. And that was a very eye-opening experience. because it's just heartbreaking. I mean, there were people that like, I had my life savings in Cream, and on the one hand, you want to be like, why would you do that? But on the other hand, you have to feel for people, because there's a lot of people that get involved in this, and depending on how you arrive at something, if you read, some influencers' tweets that says this is all safe, it's FDIC insured, you go in, you lose money, and then most people don't know what happens after a hack occurs. So I usually, around these like big loss events that we cover, I try to put out a thread on like, this is what happens. Like, you're not going to hear much from the team because they're trying to work to recover your funds or mitigate the vulnerabilities. It's kind of all hands on deck, like they're in a war room. And information is like very valuable when an exploit is happening or just after it's happened. Releasing a lot of details is not good, because if you can negotiate with the attacker and get money back, which we've seen here in the last year, there's been protocols that have been able to do that. They've been able to identify who the person was and basically say, like, if you don't give us the money back, we will give your information over to the authorities and you will have a much worse time. If you give the money back, you can keep a white hat bounty, and you can basically walk away from this. So, we didn't see a lot of that in 2020 or 2021 or 2022. So, things were quite a bit different. But most people, after a hack happens, they have no idea what happens, and they're in the Discord, they're asking questions, and they get no response because really the team can't say anything. So it's a very jarring experience, and for some people, it's like, one of the worst times in their lives if they've lost a significant amount of money.
Yeah, I can imagine it's just such an intense, emotion-rich time for everyone, really. Who like the users who have participated and lost money, but also like for you guys and the other teams who are involved in these war rooms, trying to get whatever they can back. I know. I think one of the notorious white hackers is it Sam? I think it's Sam. It's
Oh,
very, very
Samazon?
yeah. I did actually listen to some of his podcasts, and it was really interesting just to learn about like what actually happens after an exploit, and like the process in order to kind of create a war room and trying to negotiate and things like that. It's so interesting.
Yeah, there's not. I think people have been a bit more forthcoming here, probably in like the last year. But typically, most people that are in war rooms don't talk about what they do in war rooms, because again, it's like information is
Of
like
course.
the key thing that you have. So unless you're in a war room, there's not a lot of insight into what happens within a war room. But everybody in a war room is stressed. Like, it is incredibly stressful. The engineers that work in those war rooms that try to mitigate losses, like they're working all hands on deck. It's a very stressful time. But there's a lot of, I will say one thing that's really endearing about like the Ethereum community and just the engineers working in the space in general is when there's a loss, people kind of come together to try and like mitigate things, to try and, do good. And we've even seen like SEAL 911 that has emerged, which is now like the security collective. Like, they've kind of come, and this is like a public good for the community, for Ethereum, because this is something that we need to get to scale. We need to solve the security issues.
What's that again? Can you maybe share a bit about that? I don't think I know.
Yeah, it's something collective. I think it might be the security collective, but this was started by Samazon, and initially it was a group of people that were involved in war rooms pretty often, and they formed this group called SEAL 911, and this was basically like a Telegram group where if you were impacted by a hack, you could go to them. If you wanted to do like a war room training, like they would basically work with teams and simulate, like, here's what happens in an exploit. We're going to basically run the scenario like there's an exploit and you guys have to respond so we can test like your response plan in the case of some kind of like critical vulnerability that gets exploited within your protocol. So they started doing this and they kind of scaled it up to an entire organization. There's a lot of great people in the space that have contributed to it. And so again, like, this is essentially a public good that's come out of this. And yeah, I mean, I know SEAL 911 has helped multiple protocols that have been impacted, and it really helped like mitigate losses in the event of an exploit. So it's just been really great to see things like that popping up.
So let's talk about how we can actually not have these dreadful scenarios and how users can actually use Nexus right now. So what are the exact protocols that you currently have cover for?
The list
I know
is
there's
long.
a long list.
Yeah. So I mean, we cover most of the major protocols. So Aave, Compound, we cover Pendle. We have these bundled covers that bundle things together. We cover Curve, Convex. I mean, we cover pretty much all of the major protocols, and there are other protocols that we cover as well. But we have in total, I think, as of right now, like between all of our products, like 160 some listings. So there's a lot to go through. If you go to the Nexus Mutual website, you can kind of browse through what some of those are. But yeah, we offer cover for all of the major protocols. We cover, again, smart contract exploits and hacks, Oracle failure manipulation, severe liquidation failure that leads to a loss, and then governance takeovers that lead to a loss as well. Those are the main things that we cover.
Are,
And
Are these
go
all
ahead.
are these always separate, or are there like bundles in which you can directly like get all like an all-in-one when you go to when you want to like purchase a specific insurance for whatever you're doing?
Um, so I guess two things. One is protocol cover protects against all those risks that I just listed. But getting coverage for multiple protocols, typically before you had to buy like individual covers to protect against each protocol, because one protocol cover protects against loss within one protocol. But recently here we launched bundled protocol cover, which bundles protocols together into certain strategies. So if people have like a certain strategy they want to buy cover for, if it's not listed, they can come and they can contact us. We have our product meetings every Wednesday. We can review that and we can get that listing up and talk to the staking pool managers that are underwriting risk with the Nexus Mutual ecosystem and ask them to underwrite it. And then they can open up capacity, set their own pricing, and then that can become available. So we've been pretty responsive when people have asked for new products. But yeah, we do have bundle protocol cover. The most popular ones we have right now are the Pendle bundles. So you can buy cover for EigenLayer, EtherFi Pendle, EigenLayer, Renzo Pendle, EigenLayer, KelpDAO Pendle, EigenLayer, Swell Pendle. We have some of those. We have a couple more that are coming this week too that have like the circuit smart contract risk added as well. So yeah, when people request these things, we typically add them relatively quickly and then open up capacity.
And could you tell us about the costing for these covers? How does it work exactly?
Yeah, so previously in Nexus Mutual V1, things were quite a bit different, but we shipped our V2 last year. So V2 has been live for a year and a month. And with V2, we have this staking pool model where people can launch their own staking pools and they can underwrite and manage risk. If you're running a private pool, then you're running your own capital. If you're running a public pool, you can put in your own capital, but people can also stake and delegate to you. And so that staked NXM correlates to assets in the mutual's capital pool, which is primarily ETH, and that's what we use to underwrite risk. So people who stake their NXM and underwrite risk are staking against something, they're opening up capacity, and then they're setting their own pricing. So they're saying, I'll open up $100,000 worth of capacity for this risk. Let's say it's Pendle, and then they're setting their own pricing. So you might have 4 or 5 different staking pools that are underwriting Pendle protocol cover. And the pricing is going to be different for all of them. But they have their minimum pricing that they set. That's the minimum pricing they'll accept to sell that risk. And then there is dynamic pricing within the mutual. So if somebody comes in, and let's say there's a bunch of people that come in one day inside of like a couple hours, and they're all buying Pendle protocol cover, what it's going to do is that dynamic pricing is going to shift the price upward in each pool. So if people are buying cover from staking pool number 1, and there's a lot of Pendle covers going through, it's going to move that pricing up. What the cover router within the mutual does is it spreads cover buys across pools, and it's always going to route you to the lowest priced pool for that specific cover. So if you have 4 or 5 pools that are underwriting risk, as the cheapest one becomes more expensive because dynamic pricing is shifting things up, it'll shift you over to the cheapest pool. And then once pricing goes up there, it'll shift you over. And if all of the pools have basically sold cover, now the price is going to be higher. So if there is, let's say, a period of time where everybody thinks, oh no, like Compound or one of these protocols, just for example, all of a sudden there's a lot more risk in this protocol, so we all want to pile in and buy cover. Dynamic pricing shifts the price up. So if the mutual is taking on a lot of risk in a short amount of time, it kind of controls supply and demand. It also acts as a signal to the pool managers within the mutual to come and reassess that risk. Maybe they want to provide more capacity, which will also help keep the prices lower as people are buying cover. Or maybe they want to like re-rate that risk and they want to increase their pricing and reduce some capacity on that. So that dynamic pricing is pretty important, but it also spreads those cover buys across pools. But ultimately, pricing is set by pool managers, and each one of the pool managers is going to use like a different pricing methodology for how they set pricing for protocols.
Just a quick question on that. Once a user has actually purchased cover, let's say they purchased cover for 1 month, is the rate that they pay fixed for that duration?
Yes. So if you go in and buy cover for a month, again, for something like Pendle, you're going to go in, you'll look at your cover, you're going to put in the amount of cover you want. Let's say it's 10 ETH, and you're going to choose the time. So you can buy cover for up to 365 days, right, for a year. And the lowest amount of time you can buy cover for is 28 days. So with that, you choose the time, and based on the amount of time that you want to buy cover and the amount of cover that you want to buy, you're going to get a quote based on the available capacity and the pricing in the lowest price pool. Once you buy cover, that price is locked in. So, you're going to pay whatever cover fee for that month. You'll pay your cost. It's not like the price of that cover is going to go up while you're holding it, like you're streaming a payment and the price goes up. It's locked in. And that's really important for people that are buying cover, because if they're, putting money into a strategy and they're anticipating I'm going to earn 20%, cover is 3%, they lock in that price. If it were variable and it shifted, then all of a sudden, halfway into your cover, if the price goes up too much, then you go, well, this isn't really worth it for what I'm looking for. So having that fixed pricing that you can lock in is really important.
So yeah, I just wanted to share on screen just to see
Sure.
what the products look like. So these are the bundles that you were referencing before. So you can get like an Eigenlayer plus Renzo cover, an Eigenlayer plus EtherFi plus Pendle cover. So this is really cool. And so let's say if I were to click on, let's say this one with Kelp DAO, I would then be able to enter how much I'd like to cover. So let's say, like you said, 10 ETH. And then you said up to 365 days as well. And it'll tell me my yearly cost here as well. And this, I'm guessing, varies depending on the length. So if I choose only 1 month, it's costing around just under 10%. But if I choose a longer period, it's a little bit more.
Now, so a couple of things here. On this, go back to 365 days.
Yeah.
Because this is an important thing to talk about too. In staking pools, people can stake and delegate their NXM for a certain period of time. Some people you can lock for up to 2 years, or you can basically put it in and lock it into a position for like 90 days, 180 days, whatever, basically on like a quarterly basis. So the amount of capacity that'll be available for a year's period, and people generally aren't buying cover for an entire year, is going to be very limited. So as you can see up on cover amount in the top right corner, it says max under the cover details section.
Oh yeah.
And so that shows you the actual capacity that is available. If you, let's say, go to 1 ETH, I don't even know if there is capacity for 365 days. No, it doesn't look like there's any capacity at 365 for this specific product. But if you go down to 180 days, let's see what it shows.
Let's just go for around 180 days. Okay. See, look, there's 1,300 ETH now available.
Yeah. And so you can see how much is there, and you can see what the cost is at that price as well. And then if you move it down to the minimum period, then you can see what the price is. So if you just go to 28 days, you can see it's much lower. There's more capacity at that price. So depending on the amount of time that you want to buy cover for, there is that option as well. And then if there isn't cover available, there's actually an option. I think it maybe if you have your wallet connected, but it'll show you like there's not enough capacity available, and you can actually request capacity to be opened up within the UI, and then that message is routed over to staking pool managers as well. So you can actually communicate directly with the staking pool managers through the UI.
Oh, that's lovely. That's a really nice feature, actually. Okay.
It actually is.
One thing I wanted to point out too here is if you look at the pricing on here. So if you zoom in a bit for folks, you can see.
Let's go back on here.
Actually, I want to go back up to that main page because it shows the pricing spreads. And this goes back to what we were talking about with the staking pools. So you can see the amount of capacity that's available, and you can see the pricing. So you can see for something like Eigenlayer, Kelp DAO, and Pendle, pricing ranges from 9.3% to almost 32%. So that, again, is based on the range that's offered between the pools. There is one pool where it's very high, and that's because they've sold a lot of this cover, and so dynamic pricing has shifted that price up. And then the lowest price pool, you can see that range. So we provide that range just to let people know this is basically what the pools are pricing that risk at. And so that's like across all the pools, this is the range, and then the amount of capacity that's available. So you can actually preview the range that's being offered across all the pools right here on the browse covers page.
What's really interesting is like the range for something like this eigenlayer with Kelp and Pendle is quite high, but if you look at like let's say the range for eigenlayer Renzo and Pendle is significantly lower. Why is that exactly?
Yeah, that goes back to demand. So if you were to
Okay.
look at how much active cover is available, or how much active cover is currently on like Eigenlayer, KelpDAO, and Pendle,
Hmm.
people have bought a lot of that cover recently, and so that price has shifted up in some pools. For Eigenlayer, Renzo, and Pendle, the price is lower. So as that price shifts up, it also decays down over time. And so it decays by 2% each day in each pool. So in the highest price pool, it's going to come down by roughly about 2%. So there's a certain velocity that the price decays at that comes back down. And this basically allows for price discovery within certain pools so that we're not underwriting risk at too low a price. But this also, again, spreads cover buys across pools. It's going to jump up for pools. Like I imagine the highest price pool probably for this is the pool that I underwrite with, which is pool 22. There's not as much capital in there as, let's say, pool 2 or pool 3 or 4. So pools with more capital aren't going to be as price sensitive. So if they sell a lot of cover, the price will move up by not by like nearly as much as it will in a pool with less capital in it.
Is there a way to see that on the app as well?
The active cover amount?
Just the different pools itself.
Oh yeah, if you click on stake. So we've redone the buy cover, but if you click on stake, it'll take you to the older version of the app.
Yep.
Sometimes this takes a minute to load. But in here, you can see all of the different staking pools. Some of them have NXM in them, some of them don't. Some of them are actively managed. You can see like pool 1 is the foundation pool. They have about 16,500 NXM that they underwrite with. There is Hugh Karp, the founder, his personal pool that he underwrites with. There are the two
Yep.
Ease pools that they underwrite with. And so you can see how much NXM they have that they're underwriting risk with, and you can see the pool APY for what people in that pool are earning as well. And so you can go through, you know, if you were to click on one of these, you can go in and see exactly what they're underwriting in the pool as well, what they've set them in pricing at, what the spot pricing's at, you know, what the current weight is, what the max capacity is, and you can see all these different products.
How many pools are there, give or take, right now?
There are 22. I have the most recent pool. So pool 22 is mine. This one is the one that we were
Let's
just
have a
looking
look
at,
at-
I believe, was the
Yeah,
foundation.
that was
or
the
Hughes
Nexual.
pool.
Yeah, that was the
Yeah.
foundation one.
Can you
I want
maybe
to go to pool 22. Let's go to that one.
Yeah.
Wow,
and
nice APY.
Yeah.
what's the APY there again?
It's like
It was a
24.2 or
Wow.
something.
And like, how does one decide, like, or how do you, for example, recommend someone or explain to them the benefits of actually becoming, like, opening such a pool? You know what I mean? Like, how difficult is the process as well, and like, for whom is it, if you know what I mean? Like, what kind of an investor or whatever you should be in order to actually like think about this?
Yeah. So I think there's two functions. One is you can stake NXM and delegate it to a pool manager, or you can create your own pool. You can run your own pool. You can set your own, you know, variables in the pool, the capacity, the pricing. I have been researching risk for 3 years in DeFi. I hit a lot of the listing process. I have a due diligence process that I go through when I'm looking at these things. So I have a risk framework in mind when I'm underwriting risk and looking at things. Everybody has a different one. I think it's like running a pool itself is not for the average person. You're taking on risk. I mean, if you're staking NXM and you're underwriting cover, whether you're delegating it to a pool or you're running your own pool, if you sell cover and there is a loss and people file claims that bought cover from your pool, if those claims are approved and paid, then NXM in your pool is going to get burned. And that NXM that gets burned unlocks capital in the capital pool that's used to pay out those claims. So, I mean, there is risk when you're underwriting cover for sure. But what you can do is you can control the amount of exposure you have to any one risk. You can underwrite cover. You can set how much capacity you're willing to underwrite. So if you were to go back to that, I can walk you through some of the things in
Oh
my
yeah, sure.
pool.
Let's go back to it.
And everything. And I can talk about some things, why pricing's higher, why capacity is open for certain things.
Nice.
And so with this, you can also see on the details part, right? You can see the APY, which I know is everyone's favorite part, but you can also see the pool leverage. So you can underwrite cover with up to 20 times leverage. So in my pool, there is 7,100 NXM. Some of it is mine. Some of it is NXM that's been delegated to me by other members. And the amount of leverage is how much cover you're underwriting. So you can only underwrite for one risk 100% of the NXM that you have in the pool, but you can underwrite on multiple risks. Now, if a claim is paid out for one of those risks, it's going to reduce the amount of NXM you have in the pool, and it'll reduce the amount of capacity that you have in the pool. It's very unlikely that if there was a loss event, that you would have multiple claims coming in for single cover products. For some of the bundles, there is kind of correlated exposure, but again, these are things that you can control. These are also things that you can watch and you can match correlation with. That's something that we keep track of within the mutual. The limit threshold for like the total amount of cover that across all pools can be sold is 20% of the capital in the pool. So there are like risk controls in place for the overall mutual. And for each pool, again, the most you can underwrite is 100% of the capital that you have. But you can underwrite on multiple risks. And this is how, in the traditional insurance world, this is how it works. They underwrite more risk than the capital they have. They invest the float to earn revenue off of idle capital in the pool. And then those investment earnings are used to build up capital that can be used for future claims as well. So anyways, going back to my specific pool, for things that have been around, I'll open up 50%. I have less capital, so opening up more cover takes more capacity in my pool. If you have a lot of cover or a lot of NXM that you have staked, you can open up a lot of cover by allocating a smaller weight. But it's the weight of the amount of NXM. So when you see 50%, that means I'm underwriting it with 50% of the total NXM that I have in my pool. You can look at something, for example, like Velodrome V2, and that one's at 100%. It's at 100% because I had somebody that came to me and said, I want to buy Velodrome cover, but there's not enough capacity. I've looked at the pricing in your pool. I would like to buy cover from you at that price. Would you be willing to open up more cover? So in that sense, I had deal flow where somebody said, I would like to buy cover from you. It'll get routed to your pool. I like your pricing. Can you increase capacity? And so I did that. So they bought cover, and you can see the pricing is higher for Velodrome because they bought cover and they basically maxed out my pool. And so that shifts pricing up. If you look at some other things in here as well, I have less exposure to some of these other risks. But again, I usually start somewhere in the 15 to 20% range. If there's demand, then I'll scale up capacity over time. I typically only scale up a lot of capacity for something where somebody's either indicated they want to buy cover or we're seeing a lot of cover buys coming through. The more exposure I have, I typically start increasing my pricing because the more exposure I take on, the more risk I take on, and then there's more risk versus reward. Some of the pricing, I usually start things kind of high, and then I'll lower them to kind of see what the market is willing to pay for certain risks. There's some risk where I'm just not willing to come down below a certain price to underwrite that risk. So again, you can look at like an ease pool, and in ease, they have like a formula that they use to underwrite certain risks. But there's like a general rule of thumb. I really don't underwrite like compound V2 forks. I'm not a huge fan of underwriting forks in general. When I'm looking at different things, I'm looking through the audit history. And even if a protocol is audited, you have to look at the audits and see, like, were there a lot of vulnerabilities that were discovered? Were the vulnerabilities that were discovered, were they actually fixed, or were they just acknowledged and they said, like, we're fine with this? So you're looking through all of those things. So I do a lot of due diligence on all of these listings, and I'm still working on writing up my risk framework to put on the governance forum so people can review that. But I'm going to start putting in like weekly updates, just highlighting like, what things I'm underwriting and what products I'm adding and everything, and just providing like holistic updates on a weekly basis for my pool. So that's how I run my pool.
How many protocols are for example covered right now on your pool?
I have a pretty decent utilization. I'd have to like go in and break it down. We're still working on our Dune dashboards. Like you can see like active cover, and you can look in like on our cover Dune dashboard. You can kind of see how many covers my pool has sold. It doesn't break down so much. I think this is the Richard Chen dashboard.
That's right.
So if you type in Nexus into the search bar here and search for that, you should be able to see, because we have some of the DAO ones. So that Nexus Mutual covers is the one that we can look at.
This one?
Yeah, perfect. This is a DAO created one. So if you go down, you can see the active cover, which is at about 69.5 million. And then if you scroll down a little bit more, you can see the V2 covers, which is, I think, a bit further. Yeah, it's a bit further down. You'll see it. It'll look like a database right there. Perfect.
This is,
So
here it is.
that's the
Now
V1. These are the V2 covers. So you can see the covers that have come through. So we just had Liquid Collective buy a really large cover that got routed to staking pool number 5. And you can see that over by the product type tag. You can see what staking pool it was routed to. So for some of these covers, if one pool doesn't have enough capacity to underwrite the whole risk that somebody wants to buy cover for, it'll get split across a couple of different staking pools. So for my pool, mine's pool 22. So you can see I didn't take on the total risk for a certain risk. So I think if we can find one like cover ID 652 or a 662,
Here's
which
652.
yeah. That one's for Trader Joe. So that one got split across pool 2 and pool 7, it looks like.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't show how much each pool underwrote the cover for, but you can see how
You can
much
figure it out because
the cover
it's the
fees are
same.
between the two of them. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's still something that we have to work on, is to break out like what exposure a staking pool has. We have a staking dashboard, but it's currently not it's not updated. There's something wrong with it. So we just onboarded a new Dune wizard, and he's getting up to speed on things. So that should be fixed here in the next few weeks.
and
But yeah, we have quite a few dashboards that cover all of the metrics within the mutual as well here on Dune.
there's so much interesting data probably about an emerging market like insurance within DeFi, that it's kind of like it's insane. Like I'm kind of curious about like in your mind, what's the best metric to demonstrate, or some of the best metrics to demonstrate how early this industry actually is? Because I think that like when I started with like DeFi summer of 2020, and I started like learning about the fact that there's an actual like new emerging finance that pretty much no one that I knew back then knows about. I think that two of the use cases that I was most actually stunned that are gonna like emerge is lending and insurance. And I think that lending is already like the market is much more open already to lending. Like it's mostly what DeFi is all about. Like, of course, like perps and stuff, like price speculation, but that's not exactly like a financial service, I think, in a way. But lending markets are so huge. But like I think that I don't know the actual sizes of these industries worldwide, but insurance is something huge. Like it's one of the biggest industries out there. But I still think that the adoption of it, even with products like Nexus that are like specifically oriented to what we do now with lending and all like the money markets that we do, it's still pretty small. I think. And I think I thought about it when you showed like that stat over there. I don't remember exactly what it was that showed like 69 million of like open coverage or something like that.
Active cover, yeah.
To me, it just seemed like it kind of shows. It's of course like it's a lot, but it still kind of shows like how small are we and how early this whole industry is, because this can go like several magnitudes higher.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the on-chain coverage market is still like very, very early. We've underwritten a lot of cover. Like back in the day, we were underwriting like over $1 billion in cover. Again, crypto prices were higher. We've been as high as like $1 billion. We've underwritten a total of like 4.65 billion in cover since we started.
Oh, okay.
So we've underwritten quite a bit of cover, but one of the things I think that's noteworthy about DeFi and the people that are active on chain is it's still a relatively small pool of people, and it's a lot of the same people. So lending markets, why are lending markets taking off? The number one use case for lending markets is leverage, right? People are levering up to earn yields. And if we look at two of the main drivers of yields right now in DeFi, it's Athena USDE and SUSDE, right? The shards campaign, and then people earning the yields by staking it. But primarily what people are doing is they're farming shards, to get the ENA token. So that's one massive driver of yield for stablecoins. And for liquid restaking tokens, which is the primary like ETH-based yield, it's farming points on EigenLayer, the liquid restaking protocols, and then basically creating a points market on Pendle. So those are the two main drivers, and we've seen things like Gearbox has taken off, Pendle has taken off because of these yield things, and people are levering up on Morpho Blue, on Aave, like any lending market, people are taking out leverage for this. So ultimately, lending and all of these use cases are about earning yield. What we do see is we see a very much risk-on crowd. People that hold crypto in general are more risk-on. People that have been in this space have a different approach to risk management. There are a lot of people, like when we use the term degen, I think we use it pretty loosely, but real degens don't buy cover, right? They put their money across 200 protocols, and that's their full-time job. They just farm yield. They might lose $1 million in one hack, but they've got like $50 million across 200 other protocols. So that's how they manage their risk. That's not feasible for the average person. So the people that we're seeing buying cover are funds, high net worth individuals, people that are newer to the space. But discoverability is one of the issues that we face is, how do people find us? How do people come in? And I think most of us that have been in the space for a while, we actually can't answer that question. I think even myself, like I talk to a lot of users, but if you've been in crypto for more than a year, you no longer can answer the question, like what are the hurdles that new users face? But I think what we see with most people is most people get in and they'll either find a coin or they find something or they find a protocol, right? Like Aave, pull together, like they use their first protocol and their world is limited to maybe 3 protocols.
Exactly.
They don't really know anything outside of that, right? So they don't trust things, they're very skeptical, but they know they trust what they know, and they might not know about these risks that they're taking on.
The traditional degen,
Yeah. So, but I mean, some people, it's just they've gotten in the space, they know they can make money, they've read something somewhere, they've put funds in, they feel safe, nothing bad's happened yet, and they're just not aware of like some of these risks. So again, like their worldview is on the smaller side. So there are people that just don't know they can buy cover. One of the things with Nexus Mutual V2 is people can build on top of us. They can create their own staking pools, and they can basically build a business that is a staking pool and like a third-party distribution service. And together we refer to those as a syndicate, basically. So someone's building a business, they can underwrite cover, they can develop new cover products, and they can bring those to market to reach new people. So Open Cover, for example, like I said before, they're on L2s. So they're making cover accessible to people that can't buy cover on mainnet because the gas fees are too high. As more people build on top of the mutual, I think we'll be able to solve some of these problems. I think there's a lot of stuff we have in the pipeline, some incentives that we're putting together to help people start building on top of us, to help people learn more about Nexus. There's a lot of initiatives that we'll be shipping here in Q2 on that front. But I think that's what we need to do. And one of the things that we're doing as well is we have like a SDK and our SDK documentation ready. So if somebody wants to integrate the ability to buy cover in their protocol's front end, they can do that. And it's just a couple clicks for someone to buy cover at the point of deposit. And for a lot of people, they don't know they can buy coverage. So having that there increases discoverability and lets people know, oh, I can actually buy coverage for this protocol. So I think those are a lot of the things that we need to get more people to buy cover. I think if you're looking at the metric, which I think is kind of where we started this conversation, what's the metric that you can look at to see how early we are? Look at the amount of like people that are actually covered against these risks in DeFi versus how much money is actually in DeFi. And it used to be 1%. It's much smaller than that now. There's not a lot of people that are buying cover, but there's people that are losing a lot of money every year due to hacks and scams and some of these things. So again, we have products kind of in the works that can kind of address some of these different issues too. It'll be coming out soon.
Interesting. What can you share? But
some of the things I can't share. I would really like to. Some of the stuff that I can talk about that we're working on is like we're working on DPEG cover, which is something that people have asked for before. So with DPEG cover, you could underwrite risk for
Wow, it's huge.
something like DAI. Some it's the stable coins. If we were willing to underwrite it, something like USDE. But you could also have DPEG cover for like liquid restaking tokens. Liquid staking tokens. So if there is a
Wow.
DPEG by a certain amount, that's the claim trigger, and then somebody's able to swap their LRT or LST for a payout in ETH. So that's one product that we're working on. Bundle cover we just came out with. There's some other things that we're building. One of them we don't have a good name for it yet, but we're referring to it internally as like yield sharing, where you would stake a certain amount of like a yield bearing asset, and part of the yield is harvested, and that would be used to basically pay the cover fees for your coverage. And then you would just deposit into this vault, and a portion of the yield that you're earning would basically be going to pay for the cover fees. And so it would be like being natively covered by depositing a yield bearing asset into one of these vaults.
Just imagine if you had yield sharing for Athena's products or like some of the LRTs. I mean, I think that would be massive, really, really big, especially with the demand that we have for those products today in the market right now. I would love to see something like that.
Yeah, and I mean, I think one of the pain points that we're talking about is it abstracts away the actual process of having to buy cover. Instead of
Of
having to go through
course.
that process, you just deposit a portion of. So, like, if you have like 100 ETH that's earning interest, just for simplicity's sake, you would deposit 10 ETH, right? 10 ETH of your yield bearing asset, and a portion of the yield on that 10 ETH would actually go to pay your cover fee. So it would be a relatively low amount that you would be paying, but you wouldn't actually have to pay it. It would just be being harvested from a portion of that yield. So you don't have to put all of your productive assets into this vault. It would just be a portion to buy a certain amount of coverage. So
Can you
Yeah, I look
integrate
forward to
like
that.
maybe I didn't understand like what you explained, but like can you integrate like an insurance service like you do, like into the flow of someone when he's just dealing with the protocol itself? You know what I mean? Like to create it at the back end, and then he really doesn't do anything, but it's like he's already offered a service that includes at least to a certain amount. You know what I mean?
oh, you mean like basically the crypto version of FDIC coverage, right?
I'm not sure what FDIC what FDIC is.
Well, at least in the U.S., there's the concept of like federal insurance for deposits in a bank up to a certain amount. So basically, like a default coverage on a protocol up to a certain amount. Let's say you would underwrite coverage for a protocol for like
Yeah.
$20 million,
I'm saying
and
that,
then
for example, like the protocol itself would come to you guys and say that he wants to to have a product built which is built in insured. You know what I mean?
oh yeah, I mean people can do that absolutely. Like I said, we have either like one click coverage or I think it's a couple clicks, but basically you can integrate into the front end so somebody can buy it at your protocol level. If there's something specific that somebody wants to build that's unique to their protocol, there's a good chance there's some modular cover product that we already have that can be adapted to that. But yeah, if people have ideas of certain kinds of coverage that they want to buy that they're going to offer to their users natively, that's something that we can do as well. So yeah. And again, if people want to build cover products and run their own businesses, they can do that as well. So there's a lot of optionality within the mutual.
I think yeah, I think that would work really well. So D-Advisor, on your point, I think especially if Nexus kind of continued to build those products, especially something like YieldShare, anyone could basically build a front end and but basically display those products. Even the protocol themselves could do that. And like, you can go to an app, for example, you can go to Gearbox right now, and I just had a look on their passive pools. They do have a button which lets you protect your LP with Nexus Mutual and open cover, and you can click the button, but it does take you to the open cover. Then you have to connect your wallet and do the process again. But yeah, I would imagine a future where that's actually integrated directly on the Gearbox app itself, and yeah, that would be awesome. That would be brilliant. I'm looking forward to seeing stuff like that.
Yeah. So we actually we just came out with that. So I imagine we'll be rolling it out in different places, but we do have the ability now where you can basically embed it, so you don't have to leave the app. You can just buy cover right in the app
That's
for
huge.
your positions. So yeah, it is big.
Kilo, I mean, this this gives such a better chance for such a product to actually be used, because even the simple thing that is actually like opening another website, users just avoid every activity they possibly can. You know what I mean? So the more you like know how to integrate it within the natural flow of using the specific dApp they're already using, I think the reach that you guys can have is like so much wider than what it is now, especially because like such a product like it can really be implemented as like I don't know, like the status quo. Like we can find ourselves in a situation in a few years that we're like thinking about this era, and we're like, oh my god, no one even had insurance almost on their funds back then. But I don't think it's the future we are necessarily going into. I actually think that in 5 years or maybe a decade, something like that, I think that not only the amount of money that we're going to have within the space is going to be magnitudes larger, but for sure, like our standards and norms and like how we actually like handle them and manage them will be different. And I think one of the main differences will be the fact that ins- insurance will be a much bigger thing than it is now. I really think that.
Yeah, I think a few quick points on that. One is this is just composability, right? So like this is the example of how did Aave get to where they are? Well, Aave is this main like I write like a newsletter each week and I talk about interest rates in lending markets, and that's like the basis for yield in DeFi. And so Aave is this building block that other people build on top of. Aave has gotten big because it's easy to build on top of Aave. So you have the Summerfis and the DeFi savers and all of these people that build these other interfaces, but they're building on top of Aave. And so because people are building on top and creating strategies that make it easy to use Aave, Aave is able to grow significantly. But look at what Gearbox has done for these complex leverage strategies. Like 2 years ago, if you were using leverage, like it was very difficult. It was risky for a lot of people. You had to manage positions. It was always a thing where like if you had a leverage position open, depending on what your health factor was, people would be like, "Hey, you want to go out for the weekend?" And you're like, "No, thanks. I have to stay at home. I have to watch my health factor." And your normal friends would be like, "What the hell are you talking about?" But like this is what for a lot of people leverage was. It was either something that was very automated, so limited to some people, and then Gearbox comes along and they basically make a very easy to use leverage product where I can lever up and I can earn these things. And of course, they've taken off with, Athena and these leverage, restaking tokens with all of these points. Like they've just really found product market fit, and they've made it very easy to access these things. And they're building on top of all of these other things. So imagine that somebody comes across and they build something like that on top of the mutual. Of course, that's how we grow. That's how we protect more people, and that's how we find more product market fit, and that's how we make DeFi safer. But also you can take that same thing and expand into other markets as well, whether it's discretionary reinsurance for traditional markets where we take on-chain capital and use that to underwrite risk in traditional markets, creating products that we can basically like yield sharing that you can really only create on chain that are specific to our markets. And I think the wider thing here is this is how we scale coverage, this is how we get more people involved. But that is essentially the power of blockchain tech, right? Being able to build on top of things, making things composable, and reducing the amount of overhead and the amount of knowledge that you have to do something and do it safely. The one thing I will say on the security side is there are a lot of protocols that put a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of money into their security. And you can do audits, you can have code reviews, you can have a bug bounty program, you can put a lot of money towards these things. But if there's a black hat out there that finds something at the end of the day, if they conduct an exploit and you cannot recover the money, there's not really a lot of plans for what happens after. Like if there is a loss event, there's not much protection for the other side of it. There's what we do at Nexus, but there's not a lot of people offering this service. So if you want to onboard more people into DeFi, if you want to bring more people on chain and have them participate safely, you have to have the other side covered. And traditionally what we've seen is people either try to do self-insurance, which is not very efficient if people are trying to run it themselves. A lot of people are using like these self-insurance funds that are heavily correlated to their own protocol. And if that happens, like if it's your governance token, one, like it's not great from like a governance risk point of view if you're auctioning off your governance token at the worst possible time. So your insurance fund is going to shrink considerably at a loss event, and then you're auctioning it off in tranches. Like it hasn't worked historically that well, and it does not work at scale. And then you have things like, and I've talked about this before, and it's not just Athena, but as an example, if you look at their reserve fund, a lot of it is correlated to Athena itself, whether it's USDE and USDT in Uniswap V3 positions, which, if there is worry and people start swapping out, then it's all going to be USDE. Or they have SDAI, like a large holding of SDAI in their reserve fund. And now we know that DAI is correlated to Athena. So if you have correlated assets in your insurance fund or in your reserve fund that are supposed to be there to protect people in the event of like a black swan event, it's not really going to do you any good if it also goes to zero when there's a big exploit or a big loss event within your protocol.
Wow, I didn't realize that. I didn't realize Athena had their own insurance fund with SUSDE and SDI. I thought it was just like cash reserves or stables.
No, you can see it. I mean, it's on chain.
Yeah.
Last I checked, it was like 32.5 million. It'll scale up over time as long as they have like the shards campaign. They added, I think in the last week they added 5 million to it. That's just in USDT that hasn't been swapped to anything. But if you look at it, it's primarily correlated to assets. So I mean that could change over time as well.
But what happens, like for example, with Athena when it gets actually big? Because, for example, now I think that people are right that as big as it seems to us, like relatively, especially to all the parties involved, like it's not big money yet. So there's no actual, like at least the way I perceive it, like it's not as risky right now. But I see it like I think it's something like that can go like 50x, 100x, like who knows how big can it be? And when it gets to these places, I'm like, will it still like all be possible?
So I think my view is Athena, like the cash and carry trade, like that itself, is it risky? Kind of, but it's not as risky as some people have made it out to be. I don't think that's where the primary risk lies. I think a lot of the risk is they have the reserve fund. So if like rates go negative, they have like 32.5 million, but they also have over 2 billion. So like, looking at the reserve fund, which is supposed to be there, if rates go negative, they can compensate people. While it looks big, when you compare it to the size of the funds that are at play, like it's not that big. And they actually have like in their reserve fund, which they used to call the insurance fund, they have like a study of like what happens. And in the study there, it's like over 3 years time, they get to 1 billion. They do talk about like their insurance fund or their reserve fund will be underfunded if they see significant growth. They've seen significant growth. The reserve
They're already there. Yeah.
It's not big enough. So that's one of the things, but I don't think it's the primary risk. I think the primary risk is the custody aspect. And so what they've talked about is they use copper and they do off-chain.
Exactly.
They do off-chain settlement and everything. But, and I could be wrong here, but as far as I know, Binance, where they hold like at least half of the funds, requires you to have assets on the exchange. Like you can't do settlement from your multi-party computational wallet. Unless that's been changed, and I'm not aware of it, that's fine. But that's one risk. And then the other risk is the regulatory risk of something happening with Athena. And then what are the rights of token holders? This is something that Paper Imperium on the Maker Forum brought up. And, basically what Block Analytica had said in their review is it's kind of murky, but we think that that's kind of like an edge case and it's unlikely to happen. But what I will say is, and I think this kind of speaks for a lot of people, is, Athena is a CeFi product. Until they come on chain and decentralize, it is a CeFi product. I think people still have shell shock from FTX because you think everything's fine, and then it just depends on the level of transparency you have. And then the other side of it is like, the stable coin or the synthetic dollar design. There's no difference between those two terms in my mind. But you're offering something that can actually trade below $1, and the redemption mechanism keeps it 1-to-1. And other people have said this, but if Athena is really only worth 80 cents per 1 USDE and you're redeeming it for $1, then the last people that are out are going to be the ones that take the loss. So there are some things there. They could change some of these things. So there is risk, but I think people are focusing on the wrong risks when they're talking about this. The biggest risk in my mind, and again, I think the Athena people have done a very good job of trying to mitigate a lot of these risks and being transparent and clear about them. But one of the things is they've grown very large. Let's not forget that Athena launched in February. They had like a basically like beta where they were live, but it was like a whitelist feature. But they've been live publicly, for a couple months, and they're already integrated up, all across DeFi. It's like $2 billion in assets, but the liquidity in the markets is not very big. So if people kind of rush to the exits and they're not KYC and they can't redeem, like that does it does pose an issue. So, I mean, there are risks there. I think the biggest risks are it's been integrated everywhere and it's only been around for a couple months. That's not really on Athena. That's on everybody else. If anything, it kind of speaks to the strength of Athena's BD team and the
Yeah.
willingness of people to kind of want to make money more than they consider some of the risks here. But
I think just
it's
like you
super
said,
interesting.
it's a CeFi product. Like, to be honest, I think that if there's one similar thing that is more decentralized actually, and is not a CeFi product, it's something that both Waj and myself are kind of involved in with the FX protocol.
yeah,
And by the way, that's how I actually met you when you were on the A Team show, thankfully, and I was really like, oh my god, like this is so not common knowledge within the crypto space as it should be, and honestly, yeah, I definitely agree with the specific risks that you have mentioned there. But also, I think the space is still so small that it has to be this way because, like, most of the liquidity is still like on these places, and until we actually get a lot more liquidity onboarded on chain, we're going to have these hybrids of CeFi as well, but we should actually use them as instruments to bring more capital on chain with time. Like, I actually think in the longer run, they will actually like just push more capital on chain, whether it's by awareness and whether it's by purpose or not. It will end up just bringing more capital in.
yeah, they're a means to an end until we can build out more infrastructure like Gnosis Pay and things like this, where you can actually exist without them. What I will say from a risk perspective is CeFi products are kind of a black box because you can't look at the risk the same way you can with an open source protocol with things that are on chain that you can
Exactly.
clearly review and identify. Somebody can say they have a lot of money, and then all of a sudden one day they go, you know what? We lied. We don't have a lot of money. You can get your money out. You're shit out of
Yeah.
luck. So we've seen that. We saw that happen after 3AC blew up and Terra depegged.
Yeah, and
That all these
Celsius
people
and that
said,
stuff.
yeah, we have money. And then they were like, actually, just kidding. We don't. Everybody's
Yeah,
gonna
we
have a bad
actually
time.
used it. We did. Yeah, we used it. Never mind. Like, we
Yeah.
don't have the money now anymore. Maybe one day, like maybe we can get it back, like all in one trade, as they say, and like make up for whatever. I want to touch on another point there, BraveNewDeFi. You mentioned earlier that one of the newer audiences that are like probably going to be more demanding of insurance products are like the non-degen capital. Like you said, and you said something about funds, for example, or I'm sure that any other types of like investors who are not like just private investors, like people opening up wallets. Maybe you can share a bit about like how Nexus even maybe tries to onboard these kinds of new user and create these new connections that maybe will allow, because I really think that it is a specific sector that insurance, at least nowadays, is there's kind of a bigger PMF there, maybe, no?
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a lot of people that want to come on chain. They want to, deploy funds. They want to earn yield. And that might be funds, family offices, high net worth individuals that want to come on. A lot of these people, they know that they can earn yield here and they have like some expertise, but they don't really know about the risks. And so they either they want to buy cover because they're not familiar, or they just have an obligation to their investors that they have to have some mechanism to prevent losses. So there is a big audience there. We're seeing like outreach for more funds that are looking for cover, more people that are active that are looking to earn. Last year we didn't see as much activity, but yields were very low and yields have ramped up. So we're starting to see more people coming back. And then you're going to have people that come on chain and want to earn yield because they're being onboarded through things like Base, more retail users coming on L2s. I mean, there's a lot there with account abstraction, some of these things. I think the end game is to make something where people don't really realize they're interacting with crypto, but they're on, blockchain crypto rails, and they're able to earn money in a way that they probably wouldn't have access to in traditional markets, and more of like a fintech application. We're not quite there yet, but I think consumer crypto is going to be a big thing here in this cycle and the next cycle. So that's kind of what you need. And in that sense, like we talked about before, you need to abstract away the cover buying process so that people are like natively covered when they're deploying into protocols, or they have a very easy option to do it where they don't have to, make decisions and review a bunch of things. They can just deposit into a pool and they're natively covered. So I think that's the main thing. With account abstraction and things, I think there's a lot of different ways that you can get around that. I think for people that are looking, like, for example, I talked about like bridging on-chain capital into traditional markets. What you need to do there is you need to create a user experience where somebody can come, they can on-ramp funds, they can pay for their cover, and again, they don't really know that they're interacting with crypto, because really they just want to buy DAI-denominated cover. They want dollars. That's what they're covering in the real world. So, that is something that's in our roadmap, is to research a kind of abstraction, to look at user interfaces that can cater to those markets and make user interfaces for people, either ourselves or through the people that are building on top of us, that cater to these different audiences. And again, that's one of the powers of having people build on top and run their own syndicates, run their own distribution platforms, is you can have multiple different user experiences for different market segments.
I agree, man. And composability is so huge. I think that, like you said earlier, like the more people can do and benefit from all this kind of stuff in a way that they don't even have to communicate with one another, and it's all the process is as smooth as possible. I'm convinced that we're going to see this sector grow so much. We could have had one at least for, I think, we should have a sequel for this one kind of soon, because I really think that, again, this is a specific sector within the industry that is just still not getting the attention and respect. I think it will pretty soon do. I mean, because it can't go on forever. You know what I mean? This is such a basic product in finance that I don't see it staying in the magnitude that it is right now.
Yeah, well, I mean, like I said before, our main priority is growth. So it's gonna be, I think, up to us to kind of move on that front, create products that help people and meet them, where they need to be met. And so we're going to grow cover sales significantly. That's our goal. We've already seen a lot of growth here in Q1, and just the start of Q2, we've sold a lot of cover. We've basically doubled our active coverage here in the first part of the year. So our goal is to 10, 20x cover sales here by the end of the year. So I think we're well on our way to that. But yeah, I mean, happy to come back another time. We can run through claims and past claim events. We can run through a lot of stuff. There's, like I said before, a lot of stuff to talk about regarding the mutual. But yeah, I think we covered a lot of ground today.
Well, I just wanted to say thank you so much for it, because it was an eye opener for me, especially with the stuff that you shared with us before the call as well. Learning about Nexus has been really interesting, and I think today, hopefully, not just ourselves but the viewers have also been able to learn a lot, and perhaps some of them will be opening up their covers or buying some cover fairly soon to protect themselves against some of the risks again that we covered in quite a lot of detail today. No more questions on my side. Do you advise, or anything else that you wanted to ask before we close up today?
Not that much. I won't ask too many questions, so I won't start now. I really think you have a very interesting product, very unique, and I really think that many people have a lot to benefit if they know more about it and check it out. And again, guys, not financial advice, although on this case specifically, it's not exactly the non-financial advice, because it's kind of a product that is the opposite of degens, where we usually just non-financial advice, but I'm buying this meme coin. But this time, not financial advice, but consider taking a look at some insurance by Nexus Mutual.
What I always say to people is do your due diligence, do research, ask questions. I love answering questions. I love helping people understand, what we do at the mutual. And like I've said before, I'm an open book. So there's nothing anybody's asked me that I haven't been asked before. I really appreciate it when people ask questions and put in some effort to understand what it is we're doing. And I try my best to educate people and kind of point out all the risks, the things we cover and the things we don't. So do your research first if you have questions, and if you want to join as a member of the mutual, you're more than welcome to. If you want to buy cover through Open Cover, you can learn more about them, but do some research first and then make an informed decision afterwards. So that's what I'll say.
Amen.
Well, thank you everyone for watching. You can go check out Nexus Mutual. We'll leave the links in the description below, including their Twitter. You can go and find out more there as well. Make sure you guys smash the like button. Drop a comment down below as well about your thoughts about the episode. What do you think about getting cover? Is that something that you've done before? We'd like to know. And of course, we'll be back on the show with plenty more guests in the near future.
Amen. Thank you for hosting, Waj. Thanks for the great intro. Thanks for coming again, Brave New DeFi. Good luck with Nexus Mutual. And guys, send it.